My brother stared at me like a locked door, and I felt the key in my throat. My name is Rowan Whitaker, and I grew up in a house where silence could bruise. We lived at the edge of a river town, the kind that smells like wet iron and lilacs, where every family knows the other's best weekends and worst decisions. My mother died when I was in college, my father last spring, and in between those two endings, my brother Nathan learned how to fill rooms with certainty. He is 2 years older, persuasive without trying, and practiced in sounding reasonable while everyone else feels unreasonable for wanting anything at all. After the funeral, we left the church and went to the house. The front porch creaked as if it meant to speak, and the hydrangeas were heavy with color. People came and went, plates arrived and disappeared, sympathy cards opened and folded again. Nathan collected the envelopes and set them in a neat pile like men stack lumber. He touched my shoulder and steered me to the kitchen, where the air still smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner. "Dad left instructions," he said, pouring water he didn't drink. "Simple stuff. I'll handle it." I nodded because I was tired, and because grief makes paper of your resistance. We had a lawyer, Mr. Denby, who had worked with my father for years. The plan was to meet the following week and listen to the reading of the will, a ceremony that felt both archaic and merciful. A room where someone would say exactly what was true, and the rest of us would be expected to accept it. On the morning of the meeting, Nathan texted. "Delayed. Denby says the estate is straightforward. No need to fuss. I'll fill you in later." I stared at the message while a sparrow pecked at the kitchen window as if asking to be let out. I replied, "Okay," and felt stupid as soon as I sent it. Later came, but his update did not. The next day he sent another text. "All good. Minor paperwork. Trust me." I have always wanted to trust him. When we were little, he held my hand crossing the bridge over the river, and once, when a dog knocked me down, he stepped between us and shouted until the dog ran. Those stories sit like coins in a jar, rattling whenever the table shakes. But the jar is not the table. A week passed. The house settled into a new quiet, one that felt less like mourning and more like a room waiting to be rented. I cleaned drawers my father had left in tidy chaos, uncovering old watch batteries, clipped articles, and a map with pencil lines through our town. There was a hollow in the bedroom floorboard where he hid birthday surprises when we were children. I pried it up out of habit and found nothing but dust and the ghost of a smell like cedar. On Friday, I saw Mr. Denby at the market, choosing peaches with careful fingers. "I'm sorry about your father, Rowan," he said. He was a precise man. He liked verbs that meant exactly what they said. I thanked him, then asked when we were meeting. He looked puzzled. "Didn't Nathan tell you?" "We scheduled for Tuesday but he cancelled. Said you had a conflict. I assumed you two had worked it out." I felt the jar rattle. "I didn't," I said, the word strange, small, unacceptable. Denby held my gaze long enough for me to hear the hum of the refrigerated aisle. "I'll call him," he said. That night Nathan called me first. "Don't make a thing of this," he said. "There's a letter, okay? It's administrative. Dad left, preferences. That's all. I'm just making it smooth." "A letter," I repeated. "From Dad." "From Dad," he said. "Nothing dramatic." I stood at the back door watching the dark lawn hold its breath. "Can I see it?" "It's with me," he said, voice tightening. "Rowan, I'm taking care of it." The key in my throat turned. A small click. Not loud enough to be a plan, but loud enough to wake something that had been sleeping. Grief hollowed the days until every sound echoed, and in the echo I heard myself asking the same question. Why hide a letter that isn't dangerous? Why cancel a meeting that isn't complicated? Why speak for our father as if he were shy now that he is gone? People say loss makes families tender, but it can make us territorial too. My Aunt Meg called to ask how I was, then asked what my father had left the church, then asked what he had left Nathan, as if generosity were contagious in one direction only. Friends dropped by with casseroles and a certain hopeful curiosity, and I learned to answer without answering. "We're working through it," I said, and I could hear the way it sounded, like we were resisting something generous. Nathan filled space with errands. "He changed the locks because the old ones stuck," he said. "He moved Dad's truck to his driveway because it made sense for insurance," he said. "He took the file boxes to his home office because it would be easier to centralize," he said. He said things in a tone that made argument feel like impatience with the logical order of the world. When I asked again about the letter, he exhaled into the phone, a sound like a tired teacher. "It's just guidance, Ro. Dad wanted the house sold. He wanted me to coordinate. You'll get your portion. This is about minimizing hassle." "Then show me," I said. Silence clicked, lifted, resettled. "You're making me the villain," he said. "I'm trying to keep this civil." That afternoon I walked the rooms and touched the edges of things. My father's reading chair with a soft valley where his shoulder had lived. The little brass bird on the mantel we never dusted well enough. The kitchen table with 3 rings from a pot of stew we ate on a February storm night when the power went out and everything was candlelit and slow. I was not thinking about money. I was thinking about care, about the kind that keeps and the kind that sells. At church on Sunday, the pastor spoke about responsibility and truth, about how fear builds a vocabulary of its own. After the service, Mrs. Klein squeezed my hand. "Your father told me he was proud of how you steady things," she said. "Some people stir water to see their faces. Some let the mud sink." When I got home, a white envelope lay inside my mailbox with my name printed in my father's square hand. The postmark was from 2 months earlier. For a moment I believed the universe was decent and timing could be kind. I opened it carefully and found a note about a thermostat he had ordered, a small joke about our town's obsession with weather, and a line I read 3 times. "When the time comes, see Denby. He will have what matters." My phone vibrated. Nathan again. "Denby wants us to meet, but I told him we're aligned. Why pay him to read the obvious?" "I want the meeting," I said. He laughed once, without humor. "You want the theater." "I want the truth," I said, and I felt how little I had asked in the months before, how smooth we had let things pass between us because smooth feels like love even when it is only oil on water. That night I wrote a small vow in a notebook I used for groceries and reminders. I wrote, "I will not be calmed out of what belongs to both of us." I wrote, "I will trust who my father trusted." I circled Denby's name. The pen left an indentation through the paper and into the wood beneath. On Tuesday morning I went to Denby's office without telling Nathan. The building was a brick rectangle with a blue door that the sun found first thing every day. The receptionist, Lena, had a voice that could straighten a crooked picture frame. She recognized my name and led me to a small conference room where a glass pitcher sweated into a paper napkin. Denby entered with a folder under his arm and the kind of tired that comes from weeks, not nights. "I'm glad you came," he said, closing the door. "I worried we had lost each other." I told him about the cancellations. He listened without leaning away from any part of it. Then he opened the folder and slid a single-page letter across the table, his fingertips steady as he released it. "Your father dropped this with me 3 weeks before he died. He asked me to hold it until I had both of you in the room. But given the circumstances, and your brother's reluctance, I believe you have a right to read it now." I recognized the stationery before I recognized the handwriting, thick, off-white, embossed at the top with his name, the same paper he used to write congratulations to students he had mentored. The first sentence was my father at his most exact. "If this letter is in your hands, I am not." My mouth formed a shape that did not become sound. He wrote about the house, which he wanted kept if possible, or sold only if both of us consented. He wrote about savings accounts we knew and one I did not, a small fund created from his consulting work, set aside specifically for Rowan's steady work, which is less visible than Nathan's and no less vital. He wrote about the river and the bridge and the way he hoped we would continue to cross toward each other. He wrote, finally, about the workshop behind the house, where his tools had been organized with a patience that never made it to dinner. There is a box marked Rowan on the top shelf. It contains my journals and the land survey for the small lot by Stony Creek. I have transferred that lot to Rowan, because she always knew where quiet lives. I read the paragraph again. The small lot by Stony Creek was where the alder trees turn early and the ground holds its cool. We had picnicked there when we were small, we called it the Sunday field. I looked up, and Denby watched my face with the expression of someone waiting to know whether to bring water or a chair. This is not guidance, I said. This is instruction. It is, he said gently. And the will matches it. Nathan has seen that will. He insisted we delay the reading because he claimed you were unwell. Unwell, I repeated, surprised by the word's dull edge. Denby sat forward. Rowan, the estate is not complicated. It only requires honesty. I can schedule a formal reading, and I will invite the necessary people. If your brother will not bring the letter, I will. Outside, a delivery truck hissed as it parked, a sound like relief releasing itself. I thought about my brother's face at the kitchen sink, his hands efficient with water and things to be rinsed away. I thought of the jar of coins, and how we counted even when we promise we won't. I want you to read it, I said. In front of everyone. Denby nodded once. Then let's be plain. Thursday evening, your father's house, 5 o'clock. I will bring copies. I will also bring patience. Bring a witness, I said, and my voice changed, not louder, but shaped like it had found its muscles again. Lena will come, he said. She remembers everything that matters. When I left, I drove to the house and unlocked the workshop. Dust lifted in sunbeams like tiny absolutions. On the top shelf, exactly where he had said, rested a box marked with my name. I brought it down slowly, my arms feeling both heavy and holy. Inside lay the journals, the survey, and a folded photo of the Sunday field, the creek a silver thread. I felt resolve settle into my bones as if it had always been there, waiting to be told it could stand. Thursday arrived with a rinsed sky and no wind. I set chairs in the living room while the house smelled faintly of lemon and dust. Aunt Meg came with her earrings clicking and her eyes on the mantel. 2 cousins arrived, reaching for their phones the way people reach for handrails. Mrs. Klein stood near the window like she was taking attendance at a field trip. Nathan came last, jaw clipped, carrying a folder under his arm like a small shield. Unnecessary, he said in the doorway, not to me, not to anyone, but to the situation itself, as if it might listen and leave. He kissed Aunt Meg, nodded to the others, then found me. You really want spectacle, Ro? We're here to listen, I said. Then we're done. Denby entered with Lena and 2 heavy envelopes. He greeted everyone, set his materials on the coffee table, and looked at Nathan with polite gravity. Thank you all for coming. Your father valued precision. I intend to honor that. Nathan gave a dry smile. Let's not drown the room in drama. Denby began with the will. He read cleanly, each sentence landing like a carpenter's measured tap. The house, not to be sold without mutual consent. The accounts, divided as specified, including the consulting fund set aside for me. Personal effects, sentimental items shared, with a list of particular gifts. The Stony Creek lot, to Rowan, with the note that, quiet lives here. I watched Nathan's mouth settle into a shape that looked almost like injury. He had imagined the forward motion of certainty, and here came a document that asked him to pause. When Denby finished the will, he reached for the letter. Nathan shifted. "There's no need," he said. "We have the will." Denby held the letter between two fingers, his hand steady. "Your father asked me to read this aloud to both of you. It is short." He stood to soften, maybe, the way it entered the room. Then he read the letter I had already read, the one that turned our general grief into specific requests. The room quieted into breath and heartbeat. Aunt Meg's earring stopped clicking. When he finished, Denby folded the letter and placed it back on the table. Piece by piece, people looked at Nathan. He didn't flinch from their eyes. He looked at me. "You set me up," he said. "No," I said. "Dad set this up. You tried to cancel it." He laughed once, small and thin. "You always loved the part where you looked righteous." "Stop," I said, gently. "This is not about roleplay. It is about Dad." He stared at the letter like it owed him a rewritten sentence. "You know I've managed everything for months. The hospital calls, the bills, the dailiness. You were here on weekends. You were here for the soft parts." I thought of the long evenings, the medicine charts, the phone calls I traded with him like we were moving a piano up a narrow stairwell. He had done more, yes. He had done the visible things. I had done some of the invisible ones. Both mattered. My father had seen both. "I know what you did," I said. "I'm grateful. And I'm still here." A cousin cleared his throat, then went quiet. Outsiders, even family, know when their words will only become furniture. Denby spoke softly. "The law is clear. Your father's words are specific. There is no conflict here unless we invent one." Nathan looked at the window, then at the box of tissues on the end table, then back at me. "You really want that creek lot? That scrap of shade and mosquitoes? You never even liked getting muddy." "It isn't mud," I said. "It's a promise." His mouth flattened. "Fine," he said. He sat back in his chair as if a silent gavel had just sounded. The room did not applaud. It didn't need to. Justice doesn't always need witnesses, but today, it had them. Denby gathered the documents and slid copies to both of us. "We will proceed accordingly," he said. "If either of you has questions, you know where to find me." The old clock in the hallway ticked as if reminding us time had always been the only jury that mattered. People stood, murmured practical sentences about food and weather, and drifted out to the porch. The house breathed again, a slow breath through a forgiving nose. I held my copy of the letter, its weight modest and immense. Nathan rose last. He paused by the doorway and spoke without turning. "You could have trusted me." "I wanted to," I said. "You didn't trust me." He nodded once, a movement so slight it almost belonged to his shadow. Then he left, the screen door clicking shut like a punctuation mark that a teacher would approve of. Morning arrived like a white sheet spread over a quiet bed. The day after the reading, the house felt both lighter and older. I brewed coffee the way my father liked it, 2 scoops and a level third, and drank it on the back steps while the yard took attendance of its sounds. A robin measured her steps along the grass. Somewhere down the street a truck backed up, the steady warning beep sounding like a need that had learned to become polite. I carried the box from the workshop to the kitchen table and set out the journals. My father's handwriting was a parade of squares and angles, the sentences arranged like they knew their marching orders. He had written about small things and big things as if they were neighbors borrowing the same ladder. A note about tightening a faucet sat beside a meditation on patience. A list of screws by size lived under a paragraph about how people loosen from themselves when they are frightened and how it is the job of love to tighten them gently without stripping the thread. I drove to the Sunday field in the late morning, parking beside the alder trees. The creek ran quiet, neither urgent nor lazy, just a reliable industry of water and stone. A teenager tossed a stick to his dog upstream, and the dog returned with the dignity only dogs and certain old men can manage. I walked the perimeter with the land survey folded in my pocket, counting steps the way Dad taught us when we were little and curious about distance. The field was smaller than memory and exactly the right size for a promise. I sat beneath an alder and unfolded a blank page. Plans rose from the ground like small, responsible plants. Not a development, not a spectacle. A bench, perhaps, made from salvaged wood. A garden for the native plants my father catalogued in the back of his journals. A place where the wind could worry through the leaves while people learned the shape of their own breathing. I didn't want to turn grief into a shrine. I wanted to turn it into a verb. Back at the house, I found a text from Nathan. It was a single sentence. I shouldn't have cancelled the meeting. I stood in the doorway and let the room decide how it felt about that. Then I replied, "We can still do right things." He did not answer, but the silence did not bruise. It simply waited, like a chair you can sit in when your legs remember they belong to you. In the weeks that followed, we moved through the estate the way you might sort a long, kind letter, slowly, carefully, without assuming the last page explains the whole. We kept the house, for now, because keeping is also a choice. I took the journals to my apartment, and on evenings when the sun softened everything it touched, I read about the town as if it were a person. I learned my father better after he was gone than I had when he could correct me, which is a sentence that feels both kind and sad. People stopped asking what I had gotten. They started asking what I was doing. I told them about the bench, the garden, the way I wanted to invite anyone who needed a gentler afternoon. Mrs. Klein brought cuttings. Aunt Meg donated a birdbath shaped like a shallow hand. Even the cousins came on a Saturday with gloves and water bottles and the sudden energy of people who realize participation is not the enemy of ease. I did not forget the moment in the living room when the room held still and the gavel in our bodies fell. But I did not polish it either. Justice, when served quietly, ages best without display. It becomes the normal way to breathe. Nathan came by once and stood at the back of the field, hands in pockets, not entering and not leaving. He looked at me, then at the creek, and nodded toward the bench. "It's straight," he said. "Thanks," I said. We stood with the kind of silence that does not bruise. He left without promises, and I let him go without conditions. Maybe time is not a jury. Maybe it is a garden. On a Sunday evening, months after the reading, I sat on the bench with the last of the day's light on my hands. A child's laughter carried from the street. The creek sounded like a pen writing without hurry. In my pocket, I kept a copy of the letter, now folded soft by touch. When I held it, I felt neither anger nor triumph, only a steady warmth like the way wood remembers the sun after it has set. My father believed that quiet holds. He wrote it once in a margin, smaller than the main thought, as if he felt shy about his certainty. I think he was right. Quiet holds families to their better corners, holds neighbors to their helpfulness, holds our minds to the line between what we want and what is fair. Quiet even holds revenge where it belongs, not as spectacle, but as a correction you can build a bench on. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. And subscribe for more stories of quiet revenge.